First of all, let me read. I have a statement about the Snowzilla, so let me read this. Winter Storm Jonas was certainly one for the record books. With up to 30 inches of snow and gusty winds, we were extremely fortunate that our residents remained safe and that we had no significant power outages. I really appreciate the patience and teamwork that our residents showed throughout this historic storm, and community members checked on elderly neighbors. They helped stranded motorists and pitched in to clear neighborhood sidewalks. Thank you to the community, and we will be opening up our Golden Shovel Awards program again this year. For those of you who have concerns with the responsiveness of the county's Division of Highway Services, the data provided on the snow map and the MC311 call system, all of these issues and more will be reviewed by the County Council on February 9th. I've requested that executive staff from all departments involved in storm operations participate in a debriefing with the council so that we can better understand the decisions made by the department heads and staff who are responsible for these activities. While many aspects of the recovery efforts worked well, some issues need to be addressed. There's always room for improvement. I want to express my deep appreciation, though, to the men and women who worked so hard throughout the storm in cleanup to get us back on track. Many Department of Transportation, Emergency Management, Health and Human Services, and MC311 employees, as well as police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and many other professionals have worked excruciatingly long shifts with virtually no time off. These are truly the unsung heroes of this historic storm. Let me just note, we don't know what the financial impact of the storm was. It'll take some time for that to be resolved. Though I will say, historically, when it starts snowing, we're thinking about $1 million an inch. So you can do the math. We'll see if those numbers are right or not. We shall see. And with that, anybody have any questions?
I do about and again, I understand it's under review, but the software for tracking the snow plows, because you are not alone in this. Prince George's County had a problem, DC had a problem. Do you know whether or not you're all using the same software, or is someone going to go shopping for new software? What's the situation?
I don't know. We'll certainly look into that at our debriefing. You try to get information out there. Clearly, there were issues about the precision of that. And, of course, it was an unbelievable amount of snow. So that remains a challenge and something I know there are a lot of concerns about. And I'm sure the county executive people are looking into what they could have done better, and that's certainly what we'll be talking about.
At this point, what are some of the more glaring issues you're looking at from the entire operation?
Well, the things that came up the most, of course, were the lack of good information. I think people were, by and large, pretty patient with plowing. After 3 days, though, people do lose reach their limits. And so, of course, those folks who were in hard-to-reach locations were particularly frustrated. We appreciate that. We will hear as to whether there were anything else that the department could have done. Again, we're told, DOT tells us that they had 72 contract firms for field operations in addition to their own staff. And altogether, they told us they've deployed about 369 folks within the county working on that. And I'm sure for the people at the end of the cul-de-sac whose snow got plowed into their driveway, they would say that was not enough. And so we'll talk again with the department on the 9th.
What were your thoughts when you heard the county executive's pledge deadline early last week? And we heard from a lot of people that said that wasn't even close to met. What was your reaction when you heard what he had to say?
Well, I know the county executive wanted to offer our residents some hope that their situation would be addressed, and we'll hear how close they came to meeting that goal. But I can guarantee you there's always someone who's not going to be happy. Yeah. And, I don't blame them.
In terms of schools and their ability to clear, they have to worry about bus stops, et cetera. In the past, I know that Councilmember Reamer has brought up getting to sidewalks more effectively. Where does that stand? I know he had some legislation. Where is that in terms of requiring?
Well, we've always had legislation requiring folks to clean their sidewalks. I think I can't recall at this moment in time the improvements to that we've enacted. We may have increased the fines. At the end of the day, it's a question of how you can get out there and make the improvements. And I know that the county and we will hear more about this at the briefing, the extent to which certainly in commercial areas, how commercial property owners and county employees were able to work together or not. And of course, along routes to school, that's largely a private property owner's obligation to clear those sidewalks. But I know there have been cases, and we've been on the county to improve what we do on county land, certainly, and to help those other safe routes to school get cleared. So we'll hear some more about that, I'm sure. Wherever you haven't made a sidewalk or roadway clear, you're going to have a problem. And I'm sure that those situations continue to exist somewhere in this county of 500 square miles. But we'll hear more about it then. Yes, sir.
Talk a little bit about, tell us where the county is with trash removal, getting caught up with people, coming over here. We saw a lot of people have their trash out. And also what you're hearing from residents as far as, have they been getting mail? Have you been getting complaints about mail deliveries?
Well, of course, that's a federal issue, the mail delivery situation. And you'll have to check with the county executive as to the trash situation. I think it took them a little bit of time to update their website and to figure out what they were going to be able to deliver and when that would be possible. The other thing about trash pickup, remember Montgomery County, parts of the county are not served by governmental services. They have different arrangements, so it's not a one-size-fits-all answer to all that.
How would you just overall rate the county's response? I know when the first few nights when government was getting back to work, we showed a lot of instances where DC roads were cleared, major roads were cleared, Massachusetts Avenue, Wisconsin Avenue, River Road were cleared, 2 lanes coming out, and as soon as they got to the Maryland line, to the Montgomery County line, it was down to 1 lane.
Well, you're going to have to talk to the governor about that. Those roads are state roads in Maryland, River Road, Georgia Avenue, 355, Rockville Pike, of course, Georgia, Colesville Road, all state roads, and that's a state obligation. Oh, and of course, that's part of the frustration for our folks, understanding that the county can't. We do answer our phones here at the county council.
So tell us again, what do you take responsibility for? Mail is a federal thing, and what are you responsible for?
What I consider myself responsible for is to get people who have those issues to the right people who can actually solve them. So.
Do you think that 311 system worked as it should have? Was it?
Well, again, you can ask the county executive people about that. That's not a council program, that's a county executive program. Our information was that, they had an extraordinary, unprecedented, I believe, number of demands both on the website and on the call system. And so we had a lot of unhappy residents who were unable to get the information that they wanted. The question for us is there a better way to do that, deliver that information?
How many of your constituents did you hear from during the storm?
I don't know what the numbers were directly to my office. Remember, there are 9 of us, and constituents reach us in a variety of ways. If they called my house, they would have been very disappointed because my personal phone system was down. I don't have an exact number for,
Less than 100.
probably less than 100 to my office directly. And we try, again, what we do is really triage, how do you getting information to the right people. I mean, right now, I'm involved in a neighborhood situation where we're need to get the state to fix a giant pothole on Strathmore Knowles Avenue in the Kensington Garrett Park area. You know, it's a lot of bureaucracy that you have to work through to get things actually fixed. And we do a pretty good job, I think, of getting people to the right resource. But again, I can't predict how that resource is equipped to address the problem.
In terms of the state performance on state roads, how would you rate it? And that's because we've heard from other jurisdictions, again, Montgomery County isn't alone on this, saying that the state roads were impassable or people were late getting to them. One plow operator contacted us to say he was sent back home, and he was like, really? Don't you need me? Really?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I was in this office on Tuesday last week, and I thought to myself, okay, I see that Rockville Pike is down to 1 lane in places. I'm sure that will be fixed. And they didn't come back. I guess they were back over the weekend. But that situation existed as of the end of last week. So I'm really surprised that they didn't attend to it. But again, I know our people would have shared that information with them. You know, these are turning lanes. Presumably the state has maps of its property and can share that with the people that they employ to address the situation. That's interesting. They sent their plow operators home?
We only
Really?
have one call. We haven't been able to verify
yeah,
that, but that's a call that we got.
Yeah. Well, you know, and this was a major front-end loader situation. If you drove by any high school parking lot, and certainly in private property, there was a real question where to put the snow. So we'll see what their answer is. People have been rather silent on the state situation here. But of course, residents expect us to have solved that problem for them. And certainly we were in contact with the state. Well, great.
George Griffin, was it time for him to go?
Yeah, I heard about that Friday night. Interesting. Well, it's been a department, the subject of great attention and scrutiny over the past year. And clearly, a decision was made to make a change. We wish him the best. I have no knowledge of what was said or who did what to whom.
Do you think it was appropriate?
It's a time of change. It's not surprising.
Would you like to see that system changed? The county's distribution and sales? Do you think it's time to privatize?
Well, the council's taken a view on this, and the council's view is, well, they spent a year in a committee of the council reviewing the bidding there with respect to the Department of Liquor Control. They came out with some recommendations that are being implemented in terms of improvements within the system, and with legislation that would allow a special order beer and wine to be managed through a private system, and would keep the county hall. I think, and that's the legislation the council has been supporting, and it's in Annapolis right now. I think at the end of the day, all of us want to ensure that the county taxpayers don't lose any revenue or benefit from that's created by having the system that we have in place. So we've always said, you know, let's have a revenue neutral system or solution, and we're waiting to hear about the revenue neutral approach that anyone has on their to propose.
And speaking of the state and the governor, what are your views on his budget and how it would affect the county?
Well, our preliminary information is that actually the governor's budget fully funds all our formula aid. We really focused on the money, of course, and apparently we're looking at an increase of about 5% in terms of distribution to the county over last year. Bulk of that has to do with schools. About 90% of that is related to K through 12 and schools and teacher retirement costs. So, that's not too bad.
You had said that some of the counties with smaller school districts at a couple of meetings ago were receiving money before the budget discussion, the state budget discussion started. So does it look like Montgomery County will be more likely to get its fair share, sort of an increase to K through 12 education?
Well, there was a conversation that the governor had initiated, I believe, having to do with supporting smaller counties that had issues associated with keeping their schools open. That's not a Montgomery County issue, of course, and I don't know where that is at this moment in time. But from our perspective, our formula of funding expectations have been met, and that's a really important thing for us.
Speaking of the governor, have you heard from him since the letter about the Watkins Mill Interchange went out?
No, I know that many conversations are happening at many levels, with the governor, with the Secretary of Transportation about that interchange issue. To my knowledge, we haven't had any clear response yet, so that's still pending out there. I know the legislature, members of the delegation are all over this, as is the city of Gaithersburg, the projects that are associated with that, the developers of the projects that are associated with that, and of course we have communicated directly as well. So hopefully that will be resolved. We hope that will be resolved in our favor. We hope that there may have been some confusion about what this was trying to achieve. The good news about that issue is that the governor is focusing on 270 as a problem, a holistic problem that needs to be solved, and I think we're delighted to hear that. The real issue is, our hope is that we don't derail an important element of at least the part that involves the Watkins Mill Interchange, to get to that very large project. It'll take many, many years to implement. This is a shovel-ready project that's been delayed right now. So we're still hopeful.
You used the word derail. Is there any more information about Montgomery County's relationship to the Purple Line planning, if there is any?
No news yet. We expect that to be resolved. Well, we expect the final bid decisions to be announced this month, so it's coming up.
Okay. And follow up on something you said earlier. You said that the county expectations had been met. Was that in reference to education or just?
The funding formulas have been were funded this year. This was an issue last year. Some of those dollars were not included in the governor's budget. So we're glad that the full funding of the formulas for education have been satisfied.
There was talk of changing the funding formulas. Do you know if that happened or not?
I'm not aware. We're not aware of anything at this moment in time, at least to my knowledge. There are always conversations going on, so I can't speak about what is happening in the governor's office with respect to this. That's for sure.
So as far as you're concerned, the governor is giving enough funding to Montgomery County for K-12?
I would never say that, because we need a lot of money. We can always use more, but the official funding formulas have been met. The geographic cost of education index that addresses need was funded, and that was what was at issue last year. So we're glad that is no longer a debate that we have to have.
Because that's
That was a
legislative
shocker.
action.
Yeah,
He had
and,
to do
and,
that.
and that was a shocker that was not funded. So, bit by bit, we're getting there.
In terms of the relationship with the governor, how many times has he visited with the county? Has he ever met with the council? What's the relationship there?
We're trying to create one.
one of the largest counties in the state, most populous.
Well, we'd say the economic engine of the state is entitled to a visit occasionally. So we hope that we will see some of the governor this coming year.
The Silver Spring Transit Center is on the agenda tomorrow for an appropriation. What's that all about?
Well, if you read the agenda item, it has to do with funding of litigation. Of course, we're going to continue to argue about who is responsible for the costs incurred in the delay that occurred, and so that's what that's about.
So this money's being put aside for litigation?
We hope to, of course, get, at the end of the day, we would hope to get compensated for all those costs. But you got to, start somewhere.
From who? Compensated?
For the costs of the transit center issues that we had.
So the transit center issues are costing Montgomery County?
Yes, we had many issues with respect to its construction and the debate about who is responsible for some of the flaws that were identified there. And so this is to go back and resolve that. Our first priority was get the transit center open. So this is now to fund the conversation about who's going to bear the cost for that.
Speaking of costs, last week there was a council meeting regarding guidelines for spending affordability, and we're talking a lot about funding here, as I see. So, does any of this tie into any of the decisions that will be made tomorrow regarding what they will adopt for the new guidelines for spending affordability?
Can you identify yourself?
Right. My name is Nadia. I'm with the Montgomery County Sentinel.
Okay, sorry. Well, sure, we adopt spending affordability guidelines every year for how we look at the budget. And that establishes some of the criteria for the amount of increases that would be, we believe at this point in time, based on the information we currently have, would be financially supportable. And if we choose at later months to exceed those guidelines, it changes the number of votes in the council that are necessary to do that. So there's a whole process involved. Mm-hmm. So this is a preliminary statement of parameters, really, for those conversations to occur during the budget. And we're just about to get into that with the county executive's capital improvements budget. We'll be having hearings on that next week, and we'll be taking that up. I guess it's in March, and then the county executive's operating budget we take up in April, and we finalize that work in May. Yeah.
And,
so there are lots of moving parts there.
okay.
Is the county council discussing anything about the use of, I can't remember what it's called, general use bonds or whatever's used to fund projects that might have to be used in case that liquor control is partially privatized? I know that's a little bit down the road.
That's way down the road. We have revenue bonds associated with the liquor funds. Perhaps that's what you're referring to. That would have to be addressed if we no longer had revenue from liquor sales. So that's certainly a complicating factor in that conversation. But we're certainly not at that point at this time. We've identified that as one of the issues that we have to worry about. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate your questions, unless there is anything else?
Yeah, just one question with regards about tomorrow about the guidelines, as I was going to say, if I follow with. I understand that it does get amended. What have you guys made what amendments do you think will happen, considering that the guidelines, Montgomery County kind of exceeded what the guidelines say, we should be?
Well, we adopt the guidelines, and we will vote to exceed them if we choose to do that, in which case we, in effect, amended them through that process. But that's later down the line.
Okay.
Mr. Farber here is our expert on spending affordability, so if you want to follow up with any details, he'd be glad to fill you in.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everybody.